Welcome to People Over Politics. This is Josh Barnett. I'm running for United States Congress in District 7 here in Arizona. And I'm here tonight with Tom Hussey.
How you doing?
Chris is could not make it, so it's just we're going. I guess we're kind of going solo. I guess more than solo, but we are without Chris tonight, and we have there's so much to talk about. Every week there's like a million things that happen. It's unbelievable. I've never seen a political landscape, like the one that we have currently. It's like every day you wake up and it's something major is happening, but the one thing I can't wait for is Tuesday. And I can't wait for those debates on Tuesday because I have a strong feeling that it could literally make or break, not so much for Trump, but for Biden. Because if he comes off old and forgetful, there's going to be that person who's kind of like, I hate Trump, but Biden, he seems like a nice guy, even though we know he's not. But they're gonna, that swing voter, and then all of a sudden they're like, man, this guy can't talk. He forgets things. He forget what state he's in, what office he's running for, all those things. The memes. My name's Joe Biden, and I forget my name. Like all the funny memes. If those memes become truth, then I think it's basically over for him at that point. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I agree. I believe this is a highly anticipated debate. Number one, nobody's really questioning what Trump's going to bring. I mean, he's a known quantity at this point in time. We know how he's going to perform, probably what he's going to say, how he's going to attack. But you're right about the Biden thing. That's the question that's out there. How is Biden going to respond to a debate with Donald Trump? With my kids at class, we have just finished up our Constitution unit, which is basically a civics unit. Mm-hmm. And so from now until the election, every day we have one like little exercise, homework, activity that we're going to do that is in relation to elections, U.S. elections. So last week I had them vote on a new principal and out of some select teachers. And we had a runoff of 4 people, and we'll do another runoff later. I had them have like a little homework where they went home and they asked their parents what their preferred source of media was. And then we did a poll on that. So they practiced being pollsters, and we got those numbers together. But Tuesday's homework is definitely going to be, I'm going to require all my students to watch the debate. Even though they're just 8th graders, you got to think about it. In 4 years, 4 years, they're going to be voting in the next election. 4 years. That's not that long. So I stress to them all the time, now is the time to start paying attention. Now is the time to get into the game. It was about 8th grade when I really started getting into politics, because that was the 92 election. So it was Clinton, Perot, Bush, and I was really fascinated.
Perot ruined it for him.
I was fascinated by that election, and I really, really got into politics after that. So I really stressed to the kids that it's time to get into it. Mm-hmm. And Tuesday is going to be a very big day, and I hope that my students don't blow me off, and I hope they watch the debate, because I want to have some decent conversation the next day about that.
It's going to be very interesting. I can't think of a more anticipated or more important debate than this one in the history of politics. I really can't think of one that's. Can you think of one in the history? I mean, I know there's a handful of them, but this has got to be the most important one that I think we've ever seen, as far as the differential or the differences between the left and the right, or the Democrats and Republicans. I've never seen the parties so far apart, even in the history. I mean, even way back in the day, there was differences, but not to this degree. I mean, literally every single topic is like the opposite almost. And it's going to be interesting, because guys, how Trump is, and he's going to be on his game. And if you've watched him recently, the last couple of weeks during his rallies, he is on fire.
He's been practicing a lot, because I think every day this week, he did a rally.
Multiple rallies, even multiple states. Yeah,
he's been on it. I mean, he's got his talking points going. He's ready.
The numbers, the stats, the important stats, the numbers. I have. Let's put it this way: if Joe Biden walks out of this unscathed, I'll be extremely surprised. I really don't think it's going to be close. I think Trump is just going to absolutely just demolish him.
Well, here's what I've been hearing from the pundits the last couple days about the debate is that everybody has set the bar so low for Joe Biden that even if he comes off as remotely competent, it'll be a win for Joe Biden.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, have you heard that?
I've heard that.
Okay.
But I laugh because it's like, guys, this isn't to like be the president of your HOA. This is to be the president of the free world. And you want a guy who can't even put a sentence together, who openly and admittedly wants to raise your taxes. Like, just that alone, if somebody comes to you, it's like, Tom, I'm going to take 20% more of your money, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. Well, I don't like you. I'm not going to like you. You know what I mean? As a person, I'm not going to like you. And this guy's literally telling you, I'm going to raise your taxes, and I'm going to give you free health care. And I'm like, I don't really trust our government that much. And the government has proven repeatedly over time that nothing that is what we would consider socialist within our government run ever works. I mean, look at the VA. Imagine the VA basically for 330 million people. They can't even take care of the vets, for crying out loud, let alone the entire country. And it's just, and when you think of it like that from a healthcare perspective, that's scary. Yeah. You know, I mean, you talk about waiting in line. I mean, my goodness, can you imagine?
Well, again, I keep going back to my classes, but it's kind of strange. I don't know about strange, but it's weird because I'm teaching, civics every single day during an election cycle. So it's like everything that I'm saying, the kids can see play out in real time. For example,
that's kind of cool.
We
were
were talking about Article 3 of the Constitution, which deals with the Supreme Court. Guess who dies 2 days later? So now it's like, not only do I get to tell these kids about Article 3 and what it entails and all kind of the boring stuff, they write notes. Oh man, this is terrible. But now I have a chance to allow them to see it happen in real life. They're going to watch this happen over the next 30, 40 days.
Yeah.
So I get the chance to illustrate the notes that I'm preaching at them. And
it brings you even more credibility as a teacher to them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because, he's teaching me this old thing from 244 years ago. This doesn't, how is this relevant today? Well, now you see how it's relevant, right?
And that's exactly what I tell them. I said, you guys think this is ancient history and that I'm just making you do this because everybody has to do it, and then you'll move on with the rest of your lives and you'll never think about stuff again. But I told them, listen, guys, when you get out of high school, you'll never do algebra again.
Yeah.
And when you get out of high school, you probably won't think about the biological food chain again. Yeah. You'll probably have to use English because that's the backbone of communication. But guess what you're going to use every single day? You're going to use your skills that you learned in social studies every day in your decision-making process for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life. This is the most important class that you are going to take. And this stuff that you think I'm teaching you that's ancient history because it happened 2 years ago, 200 years ago, the argument has been continuing on. It didn't happen 200 years ago. It started 200 years ago, and it's continuing to this day. And when you guys become voters and you guys become adults, I guarantee you guys are going to run into these same issues yourself.
Yeah.
So you need to pay attention now.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. It's like me being a Republican, or actually a conservative Republican, but as you know, the president has the constitutional right to nominate a Supreme Court justice, which he did. Now, a lot of people don't understand that the president it's not his say if they get pushed through. It's up to the Senate to push them through. Now, back in 2013, thanks to Harry Reid, he decided he was going to be slick and try to change the rules to get the upper hand, and now it's biting him in the ass.
And they warned him back then that they shouldn't do it because the tables can be turned.
Yep.
And they wouldn't listen.
Yep. And now it's a simple majority to push a Supreme Court justice through. Thank you, Harry Reid. Now you're going to get the notorious ACB. You're going to get her, and it's going to be interesting to see. Because you know how these Democrats acted with Kavanaugh, for crying out loud. What are they going to say to the lady who has 7 kids, 2 Haitians, 2 of them are adopted Haitians, I mean, the lady is remarkable. Think about having 7 kids or taking care of 7 kids and doing what she's done to this point, you know, as far as her career and everything else. It's remarkable, you know, and they're going to, you know, if they attack her faith, which is what they're talking, due to the abortion issue, her being a staunch Catholic, but
Isn't Joe Biden a Catholic?
well, Nancy Pelosi says she's a Catholic too.
Okay, so that's going to be kind of hard for,
Yeah.
you know.
And they're worried about Roe v. Wade. I honestly don't think that Roe v. Wade's ever going to get overturned.
I don't think so
I
either.
think there could be maybe some restrictions to it in a way, I guess you would say, maybe a heartbeat bill type of thing. But I don't think it's ever going to go away. So I think, you know, it's scare tactics again by the left. That's what they do best. And, what's the other big issue they keep talking about? They're going to take away, well, I think our gun rights will be protected at that point, you know, with her in there. Healthcare.
Healthcare.
They're going to get rid of Obamacare. I'm like, good, get rid of it because it's garbage. It did nothing but double and triple people's premiums. It put people in a really bad position. They lost their doctors. I feel that there's a way better way for us to attack healthcare. And I truly believe it. And everybody's a little different. And I believe in a free market approach. I believe in what Trump has done with lowering drug prices. It's all interconnected to a degree. And with that kind of already been done with an executive order, at least, because Congress won't do anything remotely worthwhile. But the lowering of drug prices and increased competition amongst the healthcare community, I guess, on whatever you want to call it, will lower prices and increase quality because they're fighting for your business. And that whole concept applies to any industry. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be healthcare, it could be cars, it can be gyms, you know, it can be radio, you know, it doesn't matter. It applies to every school choice that promotes competition and increases quality because you want to keep kids in your school. So the same thing kind of applies, but I'm pretty sure that when she's nominated here and she's confirmed, which is going to happen. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen no matter what here.
This cake is baked.
Yeah. And they know it. And it's funny to watch him, watch Schumer going to scramble around it. I literally was laughing on the way here. I heard him and he's like, I strongly disagree. You know, like no one cares, Schumer. No one cares. You're a hypocrite. The same thing. And they all are. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But if you had to, you know, a different day, the other way around, you'd be doing the same damn thing. So don't even give me that. I'm so happy because this is going to set a Supreme Court that with a conservative agenda, a constitutional originalist in a position of a left-wing liberal. And that makes me so happy. And the protection of our Constitution is so important to me. And I know even most libertarians, conservatives is very important.
Well, libertarians, that's the key to it all.
Number one.
Yeah. Libertarians, when it comes to judicial picks, judges in general, they don't even want to hear the political opinion of a judge because they don't care.
Yeah.
If you're not regurgitating the letter of the Constitution and the law as it's written, then you ain't a judge.
And it might go against something that you like or believe in, but
that's the way it is.
The text is the text. And that's how I like it too. I'm just I would tell you that's a libertarian in me, you know. And I always say that, but a lot of conservatives, even if they're not quote libertarian, think the same exact way. They're true constitutionalists, most of them, although some I question. It's probably the biggest thing that Trump will have done in his presidency, even though he's done a lot of amazing things the last 4 years, peace in the Middle East type stuff, and that kind of thing is in the Korean Peninsula. But this, for America, could be the number one thing that he's done. And if he wins a second term, which I really believe he will, he's going to get at least probably one more Supreme Court judge in there.
I think he is.
And that's going to be remarkable. It's going to change the landscape
for the next 20 years.
For generations to come.
30 years, yeah.
You know, because ACB's young, you know, I mean, she's pretty young. And the other people he's looking at, both men and women that I've seen are in their, you know, mid-late 40s. You know, they're around 50 years old, so they're going to be there for a while. What is your thoughts, Tom, on the Democrats wanting to push term limits on Supreme Court justices?
Well, the whole, and again, you're talking to someone who's just had to teach this to 137 kids. You know, there is a reason, there's a point why the founders, and I always go back to the founders, why the founders put certain things into the Constitution. They thought very deeply and thoroughly about their decisions and how it was going to impact America, not just in 1787 or 1794 or 1832 or whatever it was. They needed this thing to last the duration.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand that the founders, in their originality, wanted that judge to be non-political. And I think that we have done a disservice to our founders by politicizing the judiciary branch. Because the entire point of having a lifetime appointment is now you're not beholden to any party for any opinion you'll ever give, because you can't be fired. That's the ultimate freedom, is you can't be fired. That's why sometimes I wonder why these judges bind themselves to a political ideology or bind themselves to a certain political party when they don't have to.
Yeah.
They're free to do their job, which is to translate the letter of the Constitution, to interpret what is exactly said and what our founders wanted and intended for our country. They have that freedom. They don't have to obey any party line. They don't have to follow any talking points. And that's one of the things that has confused me and upset me to this day, that these judges have, I mean, they've done it to themselves. They didn't have to do this. And term limits is, there's a better argument for term limits of congressmen than there are for justices.
100% there should be term limits on congressmen and senators. They have, I was just looking it up because I was trying to remember exactly what was said, but in Federalist 78, Hamilton said, quote, "No influence over either the sword or the purse. It may truly be said to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment." Just like you were saying. And if you've never read the Federalist Papers, it's like a must read. If you want to understand the thinking behind the Constitution and what was put forth, and even what am I thinking? The Anti-Federalist Papers are equally important to understand the arguments that they were trying to make, because sometimes they made some pretty valid arguments, but that debate made the Constitution even stronger, because there's probably a few things that were said that Hamilton or whoever was like, wow, they might not admit it, but they maybe adjusted a few things based on the arguments that were being made against them.
If it wasn't for the Anti-Federalists, we wouldn't have the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
That was the whole point and purpose of the Bill of Rights, is to appease the Anti-Federalists.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
I like to tell my students when I talk to them, and we're talking about the debates and the Constitutional Convention and all the stuff that went back and forth there. I usually don't like to interject my personal political views, but I tell them that if I were a founding father and I were around during the Constitutional Convention, I personally would have been an anti-federalist. So I can see the point of view of where they're coming from as opposed to the Federalists. So that's why, again, like you said, you need to read the Federalist Papers because they have legitimate points. They have legitimate points.
Yeah.
And so do the Anti-Federalists. But the fact of the matter is that they were able to come together and create the Constitution was amazing. It was amazing.
I always say this because it's kind of funny. Can you imagine if we had a group of people today that came together to write a constitution for this country?
Again, I stress to my students, it's so hard to stress to them how brilliant this single group of people were at this one point, how there was a confluence of just brilliance at one single moment in one single place that I don't think we'll ever see again. Because these guys literally created something that had never been done before. And not only did they create something that had never been done before, but it turned into the greatest experiment of all time. It turned this continent, this nation, into the most powerful country on planet Earth. Those guys did that.
It's funny because I often think about this, especially when I'm in church. For some reason, I think about this stuff, about how God puts people in one another's path. You know what I mean? Like, just, and it can be sports, it can be music. When I think about music, I remember watching Straight Outta Compton, right? And I was like, what's amazing about everything that happened, but look at the individual success of those people today, or at least at the time, Eazy died, but his individual success as well. But think about the people, like, they grew up in the same, like, within like 2 blocks of one another, and all these amazing, talented rappers and musicians, Dr. Dre, Easy, MC Ren, all these people, and Ice Cube, of course. And they literally, they all, what are the odds of these people being in the same neighborhood, knowing each other? And, oh, you do music? Oh, well, let's do some music together.
Well, you can see
it's a mirror. It's amazing. Then Snoop Dogg comes in, Warren G, Nate Dogg. It's like all this talent in one area. And I think of sports, I think like you think of high school basketball, but not Indiana. I won't bring up Indiana because I could talk all day about Indiana high school basketball and how much talent there is. But, you look at like Randy Moss. Did you guys know Randy Moss played with White Chocolate? They were on the same high school team. Now imagine the athletic talent just with those 2 guys on one team. So it's crazy, man, when you see things come together. And I'm talking like not in the NBA where LeBron can pick a side.
Where they're buying teams.
They're buying teams together. I'm talking about like high school, like people that grew up together. And
where a team grows out of superstars grow out of the team.
Comes together, and it's like, God put these people in one place at the same time, and it's truly amazing when you think about it. Because, look at Dre. He's a billionaire from Beats, from some of those Dre Beats. I think he became a billionaire with that, or damn near. And you guys obviously know the success of Ice Cube and the stuff that he's done, obviously movies and everything else. And Easy, unfortunately, passed away. But, he was doing his thing, too, even after NWA. But yeah, it's truly remarkable when you see that. It excites me, like when I see stuff like that, when I see people come together and friends come together and make them so successful. I heard the story of out of Cleveland. Bone Thugs, right? Mm-hmm. They're out of Cleveland, and how they came together, and then what they did to become successful. They took buses from Cleveland to LA. And how they came together and what they went through to make things happen, and it's I love stories like that. I love stories.
That may be a good way to next year when I have to teach civics again and the Constitution and the Founding Fathers and all. That actually might be a good way to relate the extraordinary talent of the Founding Fathers to the kids. Like maybe I should use a contemporary example.
Yeah.
Now they're still too young to know about NWA. That's still ancient history.
They might tell them to watch the movie. Now your parents might get mad at me, but watch Straight Outta Compton.
That's ancient history to them.
There's some inappropriate scenes. Block those out.
That's probably, you know what? I think that's what I'll do is I'll make the connection between the Founding Fathers and some contemporary group of people that they all know that are just above and beyond anybody else in their respective sport or music or whatever it is. That's actually not a bad idea.
It's a similar thing,
Because I need them to understand that.
Yeah.
And I think all Americans really need to understand that, because what I hate to hear more than anything else is when people say they're old white slave owners. That really, really, really bothers me when they are characterized as old white slave owners who didn't want to pay their taxes or whatever. That really bothers me, because that is not doing them justice. That is so far from doing those people justice. That I don't want the next generation of kids growing up thinking something as absurd as that.
Well, times are different, you know what I mean? And eras are different, and it's just the same thing in sports. You put Michael Jordan, his talents back in the 1950s, he'd probably be a little more superior, you know what I mean? But you have different eras, you have different eras. You have your Michael Jordan of each era in a way, to a degree, But what's timeless and what's amazing is the thought process and everything behind the Constitution, and how it is so relevant to today. It's truly amazing. Like I'm the same way as you. Like I'm blown away by the brilliance of these people, and to think first of all how it came to be, from Britain and everything else, but to have this group of people together at that time, at the same time in history, thinking that pretty much the same way as far as what they wanted to get accomplished, and start this republic, or this constitutional republic that we have today, and to lay it out so thoroughly and so well thought out, and so well thought out in a sense of human, taking into account, I guess, human error, you know what I mean? Yep. And how we think, the natural greed of a human. Yeah. And they thought about this in such a deep way. It's truly amazing. You guys, if you've never studied the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence or the Federalist Papers, I do know a place online, and you might know another place too, but I know Hillsdale College online has a lot of information and videos and tutorials on Constitution 101, and it goes through it and explains the Federalist Papers and the thought process behind it. It's actually a lot of fun. It's actually a good refresher for a lot of people.
And here's another thing, Josh, is that when, for example, we were doing the Bill of Rights, because we did a whole day just on the Bill of Rights. And it's funny that as I'm teaching the Bill of Rights, it almost sounds like I'm teaching some radical ideology because the founding fathers put these things in there for a reason. And to today's standards, some of them sound really radical. And I stress to the kids, hey, you guys got to know this stuff. This is just not blah, blah, blah. This is stuff this is your rights. These are the rights you're entitled to that nobody can take away. And you have to know this stuff because you don't know when it's going to help you. So, for example, we were talking about the Fifth Amendment, so the right, you don't have to incriminate yourself. And being a former law enforcement officer, I was able to give some more insight on like the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th Amendments. But the 5th in particular, I told the kids, I was like, listen, you guys have the right not to incriminate yourself. You guys have the right not to say anything. You have the right to remain silent. You don't have to say, and nobody can compel you to confess anything. Yeah. And I said, it sounds radical now because everybody expects that the authority gets what they want. But the founding fathers put that in there so the authority wouldn't get whatever they want. And I told these kids, if there's one piece of advice that I can give you, if the one piece of advice you can take away from Mr. Hussey's class, 8th grade social studies class, that you can take for the rest of your life, is that if you guys find yourself on the opposite side of the law, on the wrong side of the law, here's the one thing that you have to do. That's keep your mouth shut. No matter what you do, keep your mouth shut. I don't care what the cop asks you. I don't care what the detective asks you. I don't care what they throw in your face or threaten you with. Keep your mouth shut until adequate representation comes to your side. And when I say that, even the other teacher in the classroom looked at me as like, what are you saying, Tom? Like, you're telling these kids like to not do what the police and the authority asks them to do. Exactly. This is the Fifth Amendment. The founders put that in there for a very, very, very specific reason. That's so you can keep your mouth shut when authority's trying to make you say something. And again, even the other teacher in the classroom was like, man, that sounds really radical, but you're right. Like, that is the point and purpose of the Fifth Amendment. And I tell these kids, you have to know the Bill of Rights. You have to know them like the back of your hands, because someday, you never know when, they're going to come in handy and they are going to save you. So.
No, you're exactly right. I was going on earlier today about BLM. Now, I've asked this dude 4 times, and I'm gonna read it verbatim, because if you do any research at all, you're gonna find what they really stand for, and that is Marxism, and it has nothing to do with Black lives. And that's what I tried telling them. It has nothing to do with Black lives. And I asked him, how much money has gone to help Black communities from BLM? Name one thing BLM has done to support Black communities or help Black communities in any way. Name one thing. They're on here running their mouths, talking all this junk to me, and they can't answer my question. I asked it 4 different times, and they keep running their mouths to me, saying, I go, actually, why don't you go down on the south side and ask? And I go, I'm in the south side right now. I've been handing out flyers at 7th Ave and Van Buren, right down where they actually said, why don't you go down in this area? And I happen to be literally 2 blocks away. So I thought it was pretty funny. But the irony of these people supporting BLM, and they don't even know what BLM stands for. No, I don't mean literally Black Lives Matter like BLM. We all believe Black Lives Matter. We all believe all lives matter, for that matter. But it's, what does the organization stand for, or what are they doing to help Black America? And the answer is nothing. Now, I've asked numerous times from numerous alleged BLM supporters to answer my question, and no one can answer it, but they're the very first ones that call me racist and say they don't like white people. And I'm looking at them. Are you being like, is this for real? Is this real life? Are you being serious? Like you're literally being a racist to stop racism.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't get it and I don't understand it. And it has to do when I explain to them what BLM actually stands for. Look at their website. Do you believe in destroying a nuclear family? Do you even know what the nuclear family means? Okay. Well, most people don't, but I tell them and they're like, well, no, I don't believe that. Okay. Well, do you believe in Marxism? And they're like, the people that are running BLM right now have openly admitted that they're Marxists and Marxist trained. So if you don't, I guess socialism would be an easier word for most people to understand. Do you believe in big government telling you what to do and taking over everything in your life, basically? Tax you more, take over every facet of our economy, control everything. Everything you do basically would be controlled at that point. And they don't understand. They're like, oh no, I don't believe in that. Like, well, that's what BLM is, people.
Well, I heard a good saying the other day, and I think it described BLM almost perfectly, but it was, BLM is actually a group of white communists using the names of dead black men to push a political agenda. And that's what
that's so true.
That's the end of it.
I told him, when you see the violence, right? It's 90% are white people, you know? And that's a statement that's a lot of truth to it, you know? And it's not, I'm not against, if this organization was actually helping black communities, I can't think of a person that wouldn't support it. But not $1 is going to help black communities or black lives or to save black lives. Because Tim Scott put out an act called the Justice Act to help start this police reform issue, which we've spoken on before. Mm-hmm. Tim Scott is an African-American Republican senator, and he puts out this bill, and it's pretty legit. I mean, I read through it, and there's a lot of great things. I think there's a few things they could debate on and mix around, but in general, it's a great start. And the Democrats don't even want to look at it. And I'm thinking about this, like, where's BLM at? Why don't they have a statement on this? They don't want to fix the problem. They've raised $1 billion since the inception of BLM, and they've given none of the money to anyone black that I'm aware of. Because I've seen the money, I've seen where it goes, and it's to all white Democrat candidates in the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. That's where their money went. Mm-hmm. It didn't go to Flint, Michigan. It didn't go to South Side of Chicago. It didn't go to LA. It didn't go to South Side of Phoenix to help the black community. It didn't do a damn thing for anybody. And that's my point, is that you're being played. And I don't understand why you continue to push this narrative when it's not real. It's not true.
Well, and this is always a tough, racial issues is always a tough topic personally for me to talk about. You know, I've been married to a black woman for 15 years and we divorced, but since then I've been living with another black woman for the last 5 or 6 years. So, you know, for the very better part of 25 years, I've been cohabitating with a black person. Yeah. And at this point in my life, at this juncture in my life, I have more people in my personal orbit that I care about of color than I do, you know, white people. Yeah. That's just the way
it's who you're around.
Yeah, it's just
family and whatever. Yeah.
My ex-wife's family and my current girlfriend's family, they're enormous, you know. Yeah. And so that's my orbit. I find myself surrounded primarily by people of color. Mm-hmm. So, and those are the people I care about. And so when I think about my own experiences, you know, with other, you know, African American people, I tell them this, and it really upsets them. And I've cohabitated with a black person for the better part of 25 years. And in that whole time of 25 years, I have never experienced racism. Okay? Not one time, not a single time. Not one white person called me a race mixer or, you know, a in-lover. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never heard that.
Yeah.
And I've lived in Alaska and California, and Nevada and Arizona, all different places, you know. Yeah. So I have a different variety of communities that we lived in.
Yeah.
And I would say that we have lived mostly in white communities, I would say. In California, it was a little more mixed, but predominantly we've lived in Caucasian neighborhoods, and I'm telling you, Josh, in 25 years, not one single time.
Yeah.
My kids have never experienced it. My oldest is 15. She lives in a world.
She's in high school.
She lives in a world where racism doesn't exist. Yet, when she turns on the TV or when dad's watching the news, all that they hear is racism in America, and that's the
systemic racism.
Yeah, that's the primary problem of the United States. Yet, in the 15 years that she's been alive, the 14 years that my youngest has been alive, they've never experienced it. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it sounds like. And to me, so when I say that racism doesn't exist, in my orbit, from what I have experienced cohabitating with another black person and being with them almost all the time, not one time has racism ever touched my life. And you would think that if racism is systemic and as big of a problem as they say, somebody at some point would have gave me some about marrying a black chick.
Or your significant other telling you, hey, I had this happen.
Yeah, I went to the store and this happened to me.
Something along those lines,
Now, my current girlfriend, she's a little bit older than me. She grew up in Mississippi, on the Alabama-Mississippi border in a small town. And when she went to high school, they did have segregated social events. Like, they had an integrated high school, but they had segregated social events. So they had like a black prom, a white prom, a black homecoming.
So crazy.
It is weird. And she went to school probably 88 to 92 maybe, high school. So it blew my mind when I heard that things like that would still be going on
even then,
as recent as the 1980s, 1990s. But that would have been like her experience with racism. But when I asked her how she felt about it, she's like, well, I don't really know how to answer that because it was just the way it was. There wasn't like the blacks have to go here and the whites can go there.
It just kind of happened? Or is just
the way it was. Nobody said anything about it. Like they just automatically knew that the blacks were going to have their prom in Meridian and the whites had the country club there.
That's crazy, man. I can't wrap my mind around it, like happening like within the last 30 years, roughly. So I asked her, I'm like, well, didn't that make you mad? Because when you're an outsider and you think about something like that, you're like, whoa, that was terrible. It's wrong. But I didn't think of it in the context of her experience. Yeah. So to her, while I think it's racist, to her, it was just the way the world was turning. Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And in fact, and she told me, I think it was like 95, they tried to integrate the social events. And not only did the white community throw a fit, but the black community threw a fit. And so they had to keep it segregated.
They all decided they're going to keep it like this.
And they kept it segregated till the 2000s, and then finally they integrated it.
That's interesting.
It is interesting that both sides kind of were like, well, I don't know if we're ready for that.
Well, it's like my niece, she's mixed, and my nephew, I guess, he's black. He's from Trinidad. His mom's from Trinidad, and so when they're here, with me, or I take them all out with me, or Amaya, my niece, and we go somewhere. Obviously Amal's black and Amaya's mixed. And they're with me with this white guy walking around. And people are looking at me like kind of like trying to figure it out, or if my brothers were trying to figure it out, but no one says anything, and I'm not. Listen, I'm not ignorant to the point where I understand there are racist a-holes everywhere. For sure. And from both sides,
For sure.
I've experienced racism from African Americans calling me a white boy, calling me this and that, in a very negative context. I've been called racist because I'm a Republican, which is pretty genius of somebody. And I always tell them, I go, obviously you don't know anything about me or who I associate with or who I talk with or who I'm friends with. I literally don't see color. I don't give a damn what color you are. I never cared. And the people, when I talk to people from the other, that are African American, and they come tell me that like they don't like me because I'm white, and I start laughing at them. Because I don't think like that. I'd never thought like that the opposite way, and I think it's just extremely foolish to approach your life like that. How depressing is that to have to approach your life from that standpoint? It's hard
to talk to other African Americans about what's going on in the African American community if you're white, because they always come back to the same line is, well, you're not black. You don't know what it's like to be black. And I wish Chris were here, because Chris, I talk to Chris about this a lot. We have a lot of conversations about race relations and stuff like that. And Chris has a really, really good hold on this issue, actually. And it's too bad he's not here, but he's got a really good hold on it. And he said, well, when people say that to you, it's easy to respond, and it's easy to counter that, because when they say that you don't know what it's like to be black, that's insinuating that because you're white, you don't know what it's like to be in a position of you've never been in a position of disadvantage your whole life. Mm-hmm. And we've all been in a position of disadvantage. Right? Well, we've all been in a position of disadvantage.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been in a spot where we were getting treated unfairly. Mm-hmm. And then he said, and it also suggests that you are incapable of any type of empathy. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a natural human emotion. I hope most people have, unless you're a sociopath, you have empathy. Yeah. So I can put myself in another person's shoes. I have the ability. A lot of people have the ability to put themselves in other people's shoes. In fact, we teach people that before you judge, you put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. And so for a black person to say, well, you don't know that that's what it's like to be black, that's now what I use as my comeback. And I feel like they sit back and they think about it for a second, and then the conversation can continue, because generally that's the conversation killer. You don't know what it's like to be black is the conversation killer. And that always killed my conversations until I talked to Chris about it. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, this is how you continue the conversation. This is how you get around that obstacle. And it was really good advice, because I have been able to have more conversations about race and things like that, because I have a unique point of view, having been part of the community for a quarter of a century now. Yeah. I'm not really an outsider. I'm not ignorant to the issues of everything that's going on. And in response to what you were saying about BLM, you do want to expose the people for what they are. Yeah. And I don't like to use the word ignorance, but that's kind of what it is. It's a lack of education. Yeah. And being an educator, that's kind of like comes naturally to me. That's what I want to do. And I don't want to degrade them and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And a lot of times that's what people hear. Whenever you disagree with somebody, they just automatically hear, you don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid. Mm-hmm. I don't want that to come across, but I want to somehow find a way that we can better educate the African-American community. I found myself
that asking questions is always the best way for me to get my point through, because if I tell them, they're gonna get defensive and this and that right away, and most people are like that, and I understand that. But when I ask them questions, like I do with these guys, I've asked it 4 times, no one will answer me, so now I'm getting irritated. What has BLM done for the black community? Name 2 things. What money has BLM put into the black community? And nobody can answer me, because it never happened. Mm-hmm. And that's my point, is the left is very good at naming organizations to make you think a certain way. So they're like, Black Lives Matter. And if you don't support Black lives, you don't like black people, and you don't think Black Lives Matter at all. And it's like, no, that's a lie. Your whole organization is a lie. Black lives do matter to everybody I know, and life in general matters to everybody I know, regardless of color. But it's what has the Black Lives Matter done for the black community. That's what it's supposed to be there for, and I don't see it happen, and no one can answer me. And it's the same thing I asked about the Democrat Party. And I asked Juan Skeet, I'm calling him out, what has the Democrat Party done for you the last 20, 30 years? He couldn't name one thing.
Well, that's the thing I was about to add, is that, to be fair, I think people should ask those questions of any organization that they support. Agree. If you are a member of the NRA, ask yourself, what has the NRA done that has significantly impacted my life for the dues that I pay them? If you're part of the Republican Party, ask yourself, what has the Republican Party done for me that has significantly impacted my life? You can ask that of every organization that somebody believes in or follows, and it's fair. Mm-hmm. It's fair. They should question the organization.
Pros and cons of each organization.
You don't have to be a bad guy in order to question, the legitimacy of an organization and make sure that they are being true to what they're saying.
Well, I look at it too, and like I said, BLM, it's almost like they exclude, like, Hispanic lives don't matter, or Asian lives don't matter. You're like, only black lives matter. I'm like, I think all lives matter, and I'm not saying it to be sarcastic or to be anything, because I don't care what color you are. Yeah. Are you an American? Are you a human being in America? Then I'm good with you as far as I'm concerned. And I don't even ask, like when I had people reach out, Josh, hey, can you, David Jose, help me reopen my business, man? We're gonna lose everything. I'm depressed. I'm like borderline, like, serious depression because my business has been ripped away from me. Can you help me? I'm like, yeah. I don't ask if you're black or white. I don't ask if you're a Democrat or Republican. I don't care. I care that you're a human being. You're in America. You're American, and I want to help you get your damn business open. Mm-hmm. And if people would start looking, it amazes me. I think MLK would be like very disappointed in what's happening right now. I think there's a lot of black civil rights leaders from our past that would be disappointing. And I know Tucker Carlson has several of them on his show often from the 1950s and 60s that are disappointed. I've seen that. That's kind of where I got it from, because I love Tucker's show.
In the direction of which it's going.
Yeah, because, being quote colorblind, or being base your judgment on somebody by their content and their character, and not the color of their skin. And that is like I think it's one of the most impactful things that's ever been said. You could argue in the history of this country. And I truly believe that, man. I've met so many different kinds of people, and I just don't care. I just never cared what color you are. I don't care. Either I like you or I don't. Either you're a jerk or you're not. Either you're honest or you're not. And that's all I ever cared about. And it's what I see happening today, unfold in the media, doesn't seem to be what's actually happening in reality, in real life, which I agree with you, like with what you're saying about your daughter's not experiencing that type of racism or stuff like that we keep hearing about that happens allegedly everywhere. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, if it happens everywhere, why haven't I seen it? Why haven't I heard about this? Now, we've heard about the police harassing African Americans. I've heard that from many different good, hardworking African American friends I got, business owners, entrepreneurs that in their past have been pulled over, and they're like, what are you pulling me over for? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Kind of like that. And I've heard this from many, many people. And I think that is a problem that is even addressed in the Justice Act if the Democrats would take a look at it. But, we're never going to get there till after the election, because they don't want to give a win to Republican, and vice versa. They do the same thing to one another before an election, but it takes away a talking point, and they don't want to fix the problem. But it's very unfortunate, man, because what I was being told tonight, man, it's really remarkable, because I have a person here's I'm going to read. I'm not going to say who. Probably never talking to me. Probably never stepped foot in those areas before now. Talking about South Phoenix. I'm in South Phoenix all the time, people. I'm campaigning. I'm talking to people. I'm passing out flyers. I would like to know what he's been doing for the South Side over the years. I'm not in Congress yet, genius. Yeah. That's why I'm running.
Right now, you're a business owner, so you're concentrated on.
Guess what? One of the businesses, many of the businesses I opened were owned by African Americans. Mm-hmm. So whatever. What has the people in his district been wanting, needing over the past years? I don't know. You lived there. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure jobs and opportunities, school choice are big ones for you, which I'm all about, and Ruben Gallego's not all about. Not what he thinks, but what have they actually told him? Check this out. How many home businesses has he visited over the years? What are some names and business owners Southside he can visit? And all that. I'm like, you know what I put? I put, listen, you obviously don't know anything about me. You need to do your research.
Yeah, I need to do homework.
And otherwise, shut your mouth, because now you're coming across extremely ignorant. And I'm like laughing at you at this point. They have to predicate this. I'm very intelligent. My comprehension is very good. So I understand what you aren't comprehending. You were trying to be a smart ass. Well, I probably was. And I really want to know, is this how you would answer questions at town hall? Do you blow off real questions? Just speak to me. I go, you know what? Why don't you come talk to me? Mm-hmm. Here's my address. I'll meet you anytime. And that's what I'm going to tell her right now.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And going back to race relations and stuff that you were talking about was, we're not having conversations anymore. We're just having a battle of statements. So somebody makes a statement, and then there's no response because it's more or less rhetorical. Then the other side makes a statement, and there's never a conversation. There's never a give and take. There's never a discussion about anything. It's just a battle of statements.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
I was talking to a guy this week. He was an African American, and again, he told me that I don't have a right to talk about the condition of the black community because I'm white. But then again, he said that Candace Owens doesn't have a right to talk about the condition of the black community because she's a race traitor. So I said, well, who are you going to have a conversation with then? If you're not going to have
So ridiculous.
I mean, there's nobody left. There's just people who think like you. And really, that's not a conversation. You guys are just the choir singing. Yeah. But that's where we're at, is I don't want to talk to anybody who doesn't think like me, but that's not a conversation.
Well, that's the intolerant left telling us how intolerant we are. like if you like it's can't they see how ridiculous that did? What do you say when you said that to him? Like, so if a black person's conservative and they believe conservative values that don't fit your agenda of what you're trying to push down my throat, therefore it doesn't matter if they're black, white, or purple or green or whatever they are, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I didn't like how he attacked Candace Owens because I admire her. Mm-hmm. I think she gets treated terribly by the left and by the black community at large. Mm-hmm. And every time I've watched her speak or read something that she's written, it's outstanding. It's to the point and it's outstanding and it's the truth. And I don't like how she is mocked in the public and by the black community. And that bothered me. That usually I don't respond to people online or on Instagram or anything, but that bothered me because she doesn't deserve that. What she is doing, she doesn't have to do.
She's truly, you guys can debate with us all you want about this, but I feel that Candace is a true voice for truly helping the black community. She's like the opposite of BLM. She's like BLM, but actually doing something for the black community, which I fully support. And I don't care if you're a lefty or righty. If you truly are where that $1 billion, let's say if we had 800 million of it went, or 900 million of it went to different parts of the black community around the country and was rebuilding businesses or neighborhoods or whatever you want to use it for. I mean, why can't we say that? Why can't we specify that? It's not happening. Yeah. So explain to me what BLM, what they're doing for the black community. And then I'll shut up. I'll go, you know what? You're right. I didn't know that. Well, I feel stupid. Yeah. But that's not the case. And I don't understand why people keep supporting this garbage of pushing Marxism.
Well, that bothers me too, is the corporate acceptance of BLM. I think a lot of people did what you just said. Like they jumped the gun and jumped on the BLM bandwagon before they knew who they were. But now that they've totally invested into BLM, they feel like they can't retract. And we're talking about the NBA. We're talking about Major League Baseball.
And if you don't support them, you're racist.
We're talking about the NFL. We're talking about a lot of people that probably, if they would have stopped for a second and just maybe, like you said, read their charter. I mean, it's right there. They're not hiding anything.
Well, they took some stuff down. They took the nuclear family thing down just this last week. They're trying to hide things now.
But that cat was out of the bag.
Yeah, no, it's already documented. Yeah.
And I think a lot of these organizations jumped the gun and they just can't backtrack on it. It's very disappointing to me that they did that because I don't really like boycotting anything.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Or the whole cancel culture nonsense. Yeah. I can disagree with somebody, and an actor or would like to rock. I was disappointed to hear him say that he's going to support Biden. Dude, you're a capitalist. Capitalism has made what you are today.
What did he say? He showed up with $7 in Miami or something.
Capitalism made you what you are today, and you're supporting a guy who is openly socialist and openly supports socialism through the Bernie Sanders economic doctrine. And then you have the nerve to come out and say, oh yeah, I support Biden and Harris. Harris, who locked up I don't know how many black people in California for frivolous marijuana charges and bragged about it, for getting max sentencing for them. and that's what you support. And he wrote the 94 crime bill that imprisoned over 2 million black men for mostly frivolous, nonviolent drug charges.
Again.
So come on, man. And then you have the nerve to sit there and support that.
Yeah.
That really blew my mind because I thought The Rock had more common sense than that. But I still like his movies.
Yeah, right. You're still,
I still in general like The Rock. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's being misguided or paid off.
They don't have to be evil.
No.
Okay, you can disagree with somebody and not hate them.
I'll watch De Niro movies.
You know
I don't
what I mean?
care if he's a wacko. I still watch De Niro movies. I'm sorry, you guys. I still I watched my Cowboys today. They freaking lost again. But like I don't watch pregame like I used to because I'm not going to hear all the other nonsense.
Don't do that either.
But I'm going to watch the game, and I'm sorry, I'm not that cancel culture guy. And I've had some stuff where I've been mad about. I'm not wearing a freaking mask, but you know what? I just won't go to Costco if I don't want to wear one.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to like boycott them per se, but I'm also not going to go out of my way to support it if that makes sense. And I this whole cancel culture stuff has got to stop from both sides, people. My God, come on. You know. I would boycott or support something with relations to human rights in China, you know, and stuff like that. That I will cancel culture on, but as far as people and Americans, I'm not going to do that. I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, as far as China goes, well, you know, I think that along the lines of The Rock endorsing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party and the socialist agenda, I think that a lot of people, because it's been so long ago since we've seen the USSR, that people don't have a real thorough understanding of socialism and communism. And so, again, I go back to my classes, and again, I have to be more or less objective on how I teach things. But even kids as young as 13, 14, when I ask them, do you guys think anything in this world is free? Their common sense kicks in. Even at 13 and 14, they sit there and they think about it and they're like, well, no, it's impossible. Everything has to have a cost. You're right. I said, okay, everybody's on the same page. So now we have an understanding that there's no such thing as free, that in the long term, somebody's going to have to pay for something. Even if you receive something for free, somebody else somewhere is paying for that. And they all understand that, even at that young age. So that was my bridge to explaining different political ideologies, political governing systems, you know, when we're talking about civics again. And I want them to have a understanding of socialism and communism and how it works, the theory of it, but also how it's failed in its application. Because oftentimes people preach the ideology of Marxism or communism, and it sounds great. It sounds like it's going to work out for everybody.
On paper, it looks good.
But then you show them the application of it in a real world setting. And it always, Josh, there's never a single time with an exception. It always turns into disaster. It always results in a lot of people dying.
Yeah.
And it always results in poverty. And that's something I can teach without having to worry about some parent calling me saying, oh, he's pushing his political idea. Because that's fact.
It's facts.
That's history and facts.
Yeah.
Now, there might be parents that probably don't like it because they're sensitive to Democrat policies or socialism or whatever, and they themselves may be in need of more education. But I can teach that, and I want those kids to take that with them, so we don't have a generation like we have today where they really thoroughly believe that everybody can get a college education for free or that healthcare is free, and there's no caveat to it. You know.
Yeah. America wasn't meant to be your sugar daddy. You know, I mean, America was, you know, why do you think we are the richest, strongest, you know, probably least amount of poverty of any other country in the world? Not perfect, you know, but the best in the history of Earth, for that matter, as far as a society in general, with the different kinds of people we have, different colors and different religions and everything else. And why do you think we've been so successful? And it really, I ask people, much like I do with asking them what the Democrat Party's done for the black community the last 20 years, name one socialist country that has thrived. where the people have thrived. I can't name one. There might be a country that has some socialist policies, or they might have free health care, but they don't look at the point where they tax them 60 to 70% and take all their money. But that,
and those experiments aren't complete yet.
No.
And if you look at the trends of those nations,
Yep.
like Sweden or something,
they've trended away.
They're trending away
Exactly.
from
They're
some of
pulling
those
away.
policies because they realized on a long enough timeline that they're going to run into economic instability.
Almost every single one of those Nordic countries have been slowly reversing out of the free everything into a free market approach.
Other things that have pushed that have been changing demographics, immigration,
Yes.
stuff like that. It
Yes.
changes that a lot. So
Yes, a monolithic society makes it easier to do
it is
stuff.
a lot easier to do that.
But you're right. They have, over the last 20, 30 years, they've been slowly transitioning away from these socialist concepts back to a free market concept.
Which I give them credit for, because in previous experiments with communism and Marxism, they just ran it until it ran into the ground and turned into a complete disaster.
Yeah, yeah.
At least these countries are taking the steps that they need to make that transition. Even China, even communist China, even though they're still pretty strict, even communist China realized that capitalism was going to have to be a component of their country if they were going to move out of the third world status.
They offer a little more competition amongst, but they're still fully control of what's going on, But no, you're right. And it's funny because I read a book, or actually listening to a book, because I drive so much now that I don't have an opportunity to read. But I'm going to get the exact name of it. I can't think of it right offhand because it was a while ago when I finished it off. But it was by Rand Paul. And it was about socialism. And it was very, very interesting, the amount of detail and a lot of great stats in it. It's something I think everybody should listen to or read if they have possible. It's called The Case Against Socialism. And there's so many great details and stats and data to show you why socialism doesn't work and will never work, because human nature will not allow it to work, people. Human greed by itself will never allow socialism to work for anybody.
And greed it's a mandatory component of growth. You cannot have a growing society. You cannot have innovation without greed. You have to have greed. You have to have that person who wants to find a way to have a little bit more than the next guy. And so he finds a way. He works a little harder. He comes up with something new. Then he gets his reward for being better than the next guy. It is a vital component it's been vital since we were cavemen.
Yeah.
Greed has brought us out of the jungle and into civilization. That was the ultimate, that and curiosity.
Yeah.
Has driven humanity to where we are now.
And I think too, another, I guess you call it bad good trait, is envy. Because envy, I feel, it should motivate people. Envy is somebody, I want to be like them. I want what they got. So it should make you work harder to get where you want to be, to aspire to get what they have, or whatever you think. Now, it can be also very negative as well, as you know. But these quote sins, what you want to call them, but they can be very used in a positive way to make things better for everybody. You know what I mean? Yourself personally, the people around you, your neighborhoods, your people in your cities can benefit from your greed to make money and expand your business and hire new people. For example. So. It can be used for good, and I hope that's what most people would do. We have a few that probably don't. But I think in general, capitalism, that's why capitalism thrives. That's what the American dream is.
Yeah.
Individual success, right? I mean, people want to be individually successful, but that individual success also causes other people around them to be successful. Yeah. And that's what I see, and you'll never see that with socialism. There's no incentive to do anything because it's going to be taken from you.
Yeah. Rand Paul, I probably need to read that book because I really like Rand Paul. To be honest, again, I think I've mentioned this before, but in 2016, he was actually my horse in the Republican race.
I like Rand. I like Ron Paul. I love Ron Paul.
Ron Paul's fantastic.
He's healthy. He's good. He had his little whatever he had. He's healthy. Thank goodness.
He's better. That's what they said. But Rand, I mean, he's a follower of the philosophies of Ayn Rand, which, I mean, that's who he's named after, and his dad, of course, is a big Ayn Rand fan. I am a big Ayn Rand fan. I've read most of her books. That philosophy right there, I wish more people would get into, because I think it is a more sustainable political ideology, and it's more realistic. Now, it's completely anti-authoritarian.
Yeah.
So government people probably don't like it.
That means it's probably very good, right?
Yeah. I even remember when I was my last semester, maybe 2 semesters ago, I was taking a history course, just a throwaway class, but it was like a 400 level class, you know? So we were talking about some things, and it was like one of the last days, and the professor asked us, you guys are all close to graduating now. What do you guys think about, your experiences here at ASU and in political science and history, or whatever you've pursued? And I said, you know what? I've been to ASU now doing the political science thing for 3 years. And I said, not one time in my entire 3 years of attending ASU have I been exposed to any conservative ideologies.
I remember you telling me that.
Okay, not one single time. You think and this is political science.
Yeah.
So am I really a qualified political scientist, or am I a qualified, liberal?
Yeah.
Political scientist.
Yeah.
I mean, I know leftist ideologies very well.
Yeah.
I know it very well, because that's the only thing we were ever exposed to. But never, I mean, with the exception of maybe a mention of Thomas Hobbes or John Locke here and there, there really wasn't much classical, liberal, conservative type ideology being taught.
Even the philosophy behind or any philosophers,
just
they probably
skipped over like it didn't exist. And so I asked the guy, I said, not one time was I taught that. Not one time was Ayn Rand ever brought up in discussion, or her political philosophy was never brought up. And he laughed at me, and it's like, most professors don't take her seriously. And I said, well, stop and think about what you just said. Most professors don't take her seriously, yet her book, Atlas Shrugged, which is the basis of an objectivist ideology, is up there with the Bible.
Yeah, the top seller. Man.
Mein Kampf is the top selling book of the 20th century. And her work is as significant as it was. You're telling me you guys don't take it seriously. Maybe that statement right there is something that you need to start taking seriously.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's.
I really like Rand Paul.
And Rand Paul, I'm a fan. I like him. He's a true constitutionalist. Almost to the point where I get irritated with him. And what I mean by that, and I don't know if I probably had this discussion with you, but like there's a few times where he would vote on something, and his vote would be basically inconsequential what they were voting. It was going to get passed regardless of if he voted against it or not. And I understood the constitutional principle why he was voting against it, but I'm like, dude, we need this. As conservatives,
he's a social liberal.
Yeah. Classic liberal. Yeah, he's a
social liberal.
And I'm like, we need this. And then he voted against it. But he would vote against it because he knew that his vote, regardless he voted against it.
He was a throwaway vote.
Yeah, exactly. Sticking to his principles. But that's why I like him, because he sticks to his principles no matter what. And we don't have enough of that in government right now.
We don't. So
we have a lot of fake Republicans. We have a lot of, you know what? And we're going to see a lot of changes. We're going to work on it. But I heard Matt Gaetz speaking earlier, Andrew Wilkow, I think on Friday, and I reheard the replay today of it. And he was speaking on the new generation of Republicans, and which I always consider myself that, because not because of age per se, but because of the thought process. The days and the thought process of the Romneys, the Flakes, the McCains,
the appeasement party.
Yeah. That party's dead. Yeah. And I truly believe that with some of the people that we have in Congress now, we keep building on this, and we keep getting Republicans elected that are constitutionalists, that are conservatives, that are the classic liberal, I guess you could throw in there. These Tea Party type people, the Freedom Caucus type people are the future of our party, and I think that's what's going to keep America moving forward in a very successful way, a successful manner. But we still have too many what we call rhinos and dinos. We still have too many of those types of people in office that we need to clean house, to be honest with you. But and how we do that is to vote them out, and replace them with newer, younger, different ideas, different concepts that are true to the Constitution. These people that have been here too long, they get compromised, and I mean compromised not necessarily in a bad way, but they people pay a lot of money to help them get elected, and they feel.
Did you? I'll just jump in. Did you get a chance to watch the documentary The Swamp?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you have.
Okay, I'll start it. When I get home tonight, I'll watch the beginning.
Because it's got your boy Matt Gaetz in there.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
Okay, and
Jim Jordan and all those guys.
It's. I mean, it's like I said, because I've done the political science thing for a long time. I kind of had the idea of how it went, but when you actually get to see it in real life. Matt Gaetz take you through it. Mm-hmm. It's appalling.
Yeah,
what these guys are. They're nothing more than just fundraising monkeys.
Yeah,
it turns once they get to Congress, it's not about their principles and ideas and voting on tough issues and doing the right. It's about fundraising for their respective political parties.
Vote this way, they're going to pull that money. Then it's going to be hard for me to get reelected.
Fundraising monkeys is all they become, and if they don't do it. They get punished. Mm-hmm. They get punished.
They get decommitted. They get money taken away, so it's very hard to win.
You got to watch that documentary because it's and it's about Republicans. It's not a Democrat bashing.
Guys, when we say the swamp is
it's
on
everybody.
the Republican side too.
Okay, it's a lot
Maybe
of people.
Even more, you can argue.
It's a lot of people
from that standpoint, and it needs to. It has to change. We need more people elected that are doing things for the right reasons. And that's what I say when I look at the Freedom Caucus, and Andy Biggs leads that, who's obviously here in Arizona. The people that are involved with the Freedom Caucus and highly involved are kind of like our Tea Party people. They're our Tea Party people. You know what I mean? They're that type of conservative that I believe that are there for the right reasons. You know what I mean? And fighting back against this establishment that Trump keeps talking about. And that's why they hate Trump. Mm-hmm. They hate Trump because you can't buy him. You're not gonna, he's not gonna go with the good old boy, whatever's gonna make the most money for their own self-interest, and it needs to stop.
After Rand Paul, it was clear that he wasn't stage ready for the presidential nomination. I did quickly move to Trump because, like you just said, he was hated by Democrats and he was hated by Republicans, and I knew he was onto something once you get that status.
I was very similar situation as you because Trump was brand new, so he would you didn't really know much about him as a politician, right? So I always liked Rand Paul. So I love Ron Paul, so I kind of naturally migrated to Rand Paul, and I was a fan, and I love Ben Carson. I really thought he had a great message. He does have the charisma. Maybe to go with it.
Dry,
he's very, very soft spoken, but very, he's a good guy. And people like Ted Cruz, and there's a lot of Republicans that I kind of liked, you know what I mean? But when I heard Trump speak and I heard him going against the grain and fighting that deep state establishment, I was like, that's my guy. That's my guy. Because I that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
That's why I voted. That's why a lot of people voted for Obama the first time. They wanted to go blow it up. Blow it up, man. And he did the exact opposite.
Yeah, he
fell
right in line.
Yeah. So and that's why I voted. I wrote Ron Paul's name in. You know what I mean? And in the next election, I go, I'm not voting for Romney. He's a joke. And
I did vote for Romney. That would have been.
Or McCain. People vote for McCain.
I voted for McCain.
And I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just couldn't do it. Although I did enjoy the SNL imitations of Sarah Palin, and I like Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
I like Sarah Palin, but the SNL imitations were the best ever.
That might have been one of the reasons why I voted for McCain, and I was okay with it because he had Sarah Palin on board.
Yeah, no, I do. I like her. You know what I mean? But I can't decide which one I like best. Sarah Palin's, the imitation of her, or Will Ferrell doing George Bush,
right,
was always very funny. The 1 hour stand up of Will Ferrell on George Bush. If you've never seen it, thank me later. Watch it and thank me later because it's extremely funny. But that's I immediately went to Trump too.
Yeah,
and people thought, you're just wasting your. I was like, okay, we'll see, because what he was saying is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
and I think obviously what a lot of other people wanted as well, and continue to want. Guys, he's pulling us from this globalist environment, this globalist NWO type environment, and putting us first, and putting all Americans. I don't care what you think about color. Everybody had the lowest unemployment in history, had the highest employment in history, and it was remarkable what our economy is doing. Now it's bouncing back. It's bouncing back pretty quick, but there's no doubt in my mind when he's reelected that our economy by the end of 2021 is going to be damn near right back to where it was before the China virus. I really believe that.
Well, we got to see how we respond to the coronavirus thing, because it seems like we are just hanging on to this monster, and I just don't understand why we are allowing it to dictate our lives. Because
Yes.
obviously we don't have to go over the stats. We've all seen the stats, and we know that this disease isn't nearly as deadly as what was projected.
Yeah.
Now, at first, I can understand that there was fear about it.
They weren't sure.
They weren't sure, but now we have a grasp on what it really does, and it bothers me that we're still hanging on to all these type of precautions. I mean, they're even talking about locking down again in New York City.
It's ridiculous.
This mask thing is driving me crazy, Josh.
Yes, I know.
I have to sit there and I have to lecture for 5 or 6 hours a day wearing a mask, and I'm literally just suffocating on my own carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
It's
all
really,
that
really
bacteria
tough.
and carbon dioxide.
And one day I do it all the time now. I pull my mask down under my nose and I actually had a student report me for inappropriately wearing my mask. And so the principal had to come and discuss with me how to properly wear a mask, like I'm a 2-year-old. But I told him, I was like, listen, I'm going to we're going to meet halfway. I cannot wear this mask over my nose. I will die on the floor. And we came to a compromise, and I was allowed to do it. But we see more often people attacking other people for not wearing a mask. So it's like it's a sign of being more virtuous than somebody else because you don't want to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And so that's really bothering me. But that kind of goes along with this whole coronavirus thing is, when are the adults going to stand up and say, all right, this thing's here, whether it was man-made or not, we'll figure that out later. If there's punishments to be dealt, then we'll do that later. But for right now, it's not what we thought it was. We're going to live with it. People are going to die from it. But we need to continue on with the world has to keep turning.
That's what drives me insane.
The world has to keep turning, and we need to be a part of that.
Well, that's what drives me absolutely insane. I called Dr. Urso Wednesday, and I spoke with him, and I asked him, why is this not being treated properly yet? Across the board, widely treated properly with their protocol that they've been using, and he's now had, I think he said around 740 patients, COVID patients himself personally, that he's used the hydroxychloroquine, zinc, azithromycin I've been talking about since March, and no one has died, not one person. Now Zelenko's well over 5,000 now. I think he's had 2 people pass away, but they were like in their late 80s, and he got to him a little late. And then I asked him, I go, the prophylactic treatment, the early onset treatment of this, what is the percentage of success? And Urso told me 100%. He goes, literally 100%. Yeah. And he goes, the fact it's not being done is kind of scary when you think about it, why it's not being done.
Yeah.
And that's another major problem I have is exactly that, it not being treated properly, not as lethal with the general population under 70. We need to take maybe better care or prophylactic use of this drug with the older population over 70 in nursing homes. That's what's being hit hardest. The Navajo Nation's been hit hard just for health reasons in general. But this is something that could help save a lot of people that are having issues with this virus if they get it. And they're like, oh, well, it's slowing down. The numbers are down. And I'm like, oh, because we're in masks.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. The virus ran its course, people.
We're starting to get the herd immunity.
It's like
I don't even know how many people out there have gotten coronavirus and didn't even know it, just kind of went on with their regular life, and it came and went, and they'll probably never know.
The vast majority.
They'll probably never know if they even had it.
Yeah, the vast majority out there, and we know this.
But what's bothering me is that at some point, like I said, the adults, it's weird, Josh, because when we're at school, all the teachers are wearing their masks, all the kids are wearing their masks. So when it's lunchtime and the teachers go into the teacher's lounge, first thing they do when they get into the teacher's
mask
lounge,
off.
throw the mask off. So now we got 10 teachers sitting in close proximity around a table, talking to each other with no masks on, because they can't. When are the adults going to stand up and say, okay, it's time to treat this appropriately? Okay, it's time to stop being weird about it. And
the CDC
it's really bothering.
It's not even airborne. You saw that they took it off their website.
Well, the CDC also revised their numbers from people that died from coronavirus
6%.
solely to under 10,000. More people die of car accidents every year than that.
Way more people have committed suicide.
So
due to the lockdowns.
Yeah.
Than this has ever done. It's to the point where, like, I was at a rally, a freedom rally, and I spoke there yesterday, and I walked in. They had a restaurant, a little eating restaurant. So I walked in and sat down. She's like, "Okay, what can I get you a drink?" I said, "Just water, and I'll look at the menu." And she's okay. She goes, "Now, if you go anywhere, if you go to the restroom and you're gonna walk out the door," and I remember I walked in without a mask and sat down. She goes, "Can you just put your mask on?" And I started laughing at her. I laughed at her because I look around the whole place. There's no one wearing a mask. We're all sitting down and no one's wearing a mask. The other people wearing a mask are the people working.
Yeah.
And I started laughing. I go, "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to laugh. I'm not laughing at you." I go, "But do you understand how ridiculous that sounds?"
Yeah.
And she was kind of like didn't know how to take it. And I go, "So I can get COVID I can't get it if I'm sitting here.
Right.
But if I walk 20 feet where I just walked in without a mask,
it'll catch you.
That I'm going to catch COVID?" I go, "Dude," and she goes, I know. And I'm like, again, what are the adults going to step in and go, "Guys, enough. Enough is enough."
Well, and I find that now most people are following the mask regulations, not because they're really concerned about whether they're going to transmit or catch coronavirus.
Get fired.
They don't want to get fired. They don't want to get reprimanded. They don't want their gym to get shut down. I go to a gym that wants everybody to wear a mask.
I'm in the private. You don't have to wear one.
They are scared to death that some inspector's going to walk in there, find somebody with a mask down, then they're going to shut the gym down.
All he has to do is call me. Tell that guy to call me, man. Text me. We'll move it to the private, and you guys can not wear a mask if you don't want to.
I tell you what.
You can set your own rules.
But that's scary because then this is going to morph into something else, because when vaccines come out, then it's going to be a different story, because then they're going to say the same thing. Okay, you don't have to get a vaccine, but guess what? You can't work here.
Well,
you don't have to get a vaccine, but you can't shop here.
You can't travel.
Yeah.
You want to travel out of country to another country?
So now what?
You want to go to Europe?
So you can basically sit in your house and be a hermit and not have a vaccine.
People, this is insane.
And that's what I'm worried. That's the mask is a prelude to that.
It is. It truly is. And people, I said something the other day. I was like, people don't understand how close they are at this election, how close they are to having their freedoms permanently erased. And it sounds like a scare tactic. I sound like a leftist scare tactic, but it's true. You don't understand how close you are to having every freedom that, not every, but a lot of the freedoms that you have just erased and taken away completely forever.
But just think about how easy it was to get everybody to wear a mask in the first place. All they had to use was a little fear. It wasn't even like a justified fear. I mean, it turned out to not be nearly as bad as it was, but still, they're still using that same fear component to keep people in masks.
There's still like 208,000 people died. The blood is on Trump's hands. And I'm like, first of all, okay, every liberal Democrat moron is saying this. They're counting everything as COVID. Everything. Heart attacks are COVID. They always joke about car accidents are COVID.
Well, that's the thing, is every other category of medical condition death has significantly dropped during coronavirus.
Cancer, COVID.
Yeah. Cancer's way down right now because...
Yeah. They're counting as COVID. People, you're being lied to. I had a doctor that just signed up yesterday. And he was going on, and he was telling me about, he was going on and on and on. He's very well versed on what's going on in general politically. And he said, I'm willing to bet maybe he goes, if you, honest to God, if you're truly going just COVID, even though they said 6%, he goes, I'm willing to bet maybe 4,000 people actually died from COVID. He goes, these other deaths are just BS. Exactly what he told me. He goes, they're counting everything as COVID, trying to drive the numbers up to hyperinflate the numbers to make people fearful, to keep pushing their socialist agenda. And I'm like, I'm with you 100%, man. We're on the same page.
This is not a political talking point because there are physicians out there that have been reporting pressure from various medical groups that
and county coroners.
Yeah, that are pressuring them to list certain deaths as coronavirus.
And threatening, if they use hydroxychloroquine on their patients to help them live, threatening to take their licenses away.
And whenever these people go public, they disappear from the internet forever. They're gone.
Or they disappear, period. That's why Trump said, when I write this executive order to lower drug prices, I better watch it. You know what I mean? When you mess with that kind of money from people, and potential of a trillion or well over $1 trillion in a vaccine worldwide, heaven forbid, hydroxychloroquine, it costs about 40 cents a pill, can prevent. We already have a vaccine. It's that combination. Take it upon first symptoms and you're good to go. And it's been proven over and over and over and over. Peer-reviewed studies, you name it. Doctor after doctor after doctor out there has been screaming at the top of their lungs for it, and it's truly criminal. I believe what's happening right now, and time will tell, and I think eventually it'll come out that we were probably right all along.
Yeah, and I understand part of why people are hesitant to loosen up all the regulations, because unfortunately we have a vulture class of attorneys that are just waiting to start. I mean, we haven't seen the mass lawsuit, and it's coming. There's going to be a massive lawsuits coming from all different directions, suing everybody on planet Earth. And that's why the restrictions are being hesitant to be lifted.
No, I agree. There's definitely something there. And also, anybody who's died from COVID or actually COVID and not been treated properly, that's a whole other lawsuit waiting to happen. You didn't treat them with something that's been proven to work. That's medical malpractice or whatever you want to call it. But guys, we're going to wrap it up for the night. But thank you, and we'll definitely see you next week.